Sure, and even Sergio, I can see as I'm playing, he's energizing ya-ta-ta-pa. Ya-ta-ta-pa. I can see it in his body language as he sits there doing that. And I can emulate that as a snare drummer. Okay, now I've added another musical truism to just this phrase. What did I add?
Space.
Space. Wait for wait. W-A-I-T for W-E-I-G-H-T. Wait for wait. To give emphasis to something, you wait for it. It's Lewis Black. Right? The comedian Lewis Black, who gets all worked up and you see the finger coming up and you know he's going to jab it at you, but he goes, and then he releases it. Okay? Even in comedy, we wait for wait. All right? So I could do right? So even in a snare drum piece, I can shape this music. And there are a myriad of ways that I could shape it. The point is, shape it. Do something beyond the explicit marking. Why? Remember what we said before? Personalize it. Make it meaningful. With young students, I have them develop a story. What's the purpose of the first two bars? It's an introduction. Hey, you guys, look at me now! Yeah! Hey, you guys, oh, I got your eyes. And now I can tell you my story. Now, we all learn to count music in a certain way. Some of us grew up with the Orff system, you know, ta-ta-na-ta, ta-ti, ta-ti-ti, ta-ti-ta, those kinds of things. And we usually transition to a numerical method of counting. 1 and 2 and a 1 and 2 and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, whatever that happens to be, right? We learn that system. And that infuses us with the ability to play in time and in context. What it doesn't infuse us to do is interpret. The interpretation comes, for example, what Sergio was doing in that last ya-ta-ta-pa. His body language was taking over to make that more dramatic, and probably you were even pitching it without knowing it. I do. Ya-ta-ta-pa. You know, there's emphasis to that. In jazz and percussion, we do this inherently. You ever have your percussionist walk around going, we call that felt meaning. How does it feel to play it? In jazz, we do that. Because that sounds an awful lot more meaningful than 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and, doesn't it? But I have to learn to play that, don't I? I have to learn to contextualize it. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and it's square, baby, yeah, right? But boy, when I can finally go, oh, I know it well enough. Oh, the shifting accents and the weights and lengths of the notes all change to give it much more meaning and style, right? Why don't we do that with our classical music?
So I always wondered, why?
I don't have an answer for that. My answer is because we're afraid to. I don't know anybody who starts Beethoven and goes, and 2 and 1, and 2 and 1, you know, bum 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 bum. You know.
Sometimes you see those really great conductors, and they do what you did with the jazz, except they're interpreting the classical music, talking about that. And,
sure.
And you see that happening with some performers and some classical performers.
I think the great ones, I think, is who I see doing it because it's natural, it's expressive, they own it.
Yeah.
They own it. And when I'm going 1, 2, 3, and, or let me give you a classical example of it. Who am I thinking of? Holst, the second suite. Bum 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 bum. 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and a 1 and 2 and 1 2. 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and a 1 and 2 and 1 2. 1 2 to 1 and 2. 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and 1 and 2 and a 1 and 2 and 1 2. Absolutely accurate. First, kind of boring. 1 E and a 2. Bum 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 pa bum 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 pa 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 bum bum pa rum bum 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 pa. There's an inner line in there that anybody who's just looking melodically and singing it misses. That one little trombone lick, bum 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 bum, so important. And everybody passes it over. Felt meaning lets you get into that because you start to look at all the lines and how would I express those? Pom, pom, pim, pom, 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 rum, bum, pa, tom. That's the accompanimental part to the melody. And everybody and their brother rushes. They go 1 and 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 1, 2, 1 and 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 1, and they're hyperventilating by the time that they're done. But if they realize space is everything, we go back to storytelling. It's a suite for military band from the 1920s. Men on parade in uniform. What would we think about World War I? Oh, we'll go kill us some Germans and, wow, it'll all be great. War is wonderful, and then they realize the horrors of war later, right? After they've been in it. So we get these guys in uniform and we see them marching. We get the accompaniment. Pom, 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 pom. Very controlled. Got to line up with the feet. Pom, 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 pom. You can't rush if you're thinking about marching while you're doing that. Why aren't we thinking about that while we're playing that piece? I don't know. Mostly because most teachers sit there and say, get the right notes, the right rhythm, follow me, be with my stick, do this sort of thing, get that articulation, put the accent over here, but we're not really listening. And we're not willing to tell a story or convey it or make it meaningful to the musicians. But if I look at my trombone section and go, hey, you guys, you're the elite brigade. Oh, yes, I'm the elite brigade. And they sit up a little bit stronger and taller, and they think of themselves as, boom, 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 boom. You ever seen a Marine, a U.S. Marine, dress up in their dress blues? They never stand like this when they're in their dress blues. It's always, yeah. So you take on the persona of it. You become an actor. I think there's such a correlation between theater and music. Music is simply theater of the mind, isn't it? Go out in your audience and listen and let the show develop. And that's what, aren't we trying to do that? Make the movie roll for them as we play. If we're not, then we're doing what monkeys could be taught to do. Press buttons, push finger, blow air, and you get this sound. Wow, great, that's music. No, it's not. Even with simple music. Now, having just said that, Charles asked me this morning about the music that he was bringing, and one of the pieces he said, it's kind of simple, and I said, that's great. Simple music to apply these musical truisms to is the best thing to start with. Then when you start to look at a score, you can kind of peel that apart and go, oh, I'll look at this segment and this segment, and it's like looking at something more simple, rather than, oh God, I got 32 parts that I'm looking at, okay, for that. So, questions to this point, comments, observations? You understand what we did with the snare drum piece, that rhythm itself can be a driving factor in determining articulation? Especially if it's the same articulation all the way throughout, does that mean that the composer meant no articulation? No, I think you have to make some choices. Short looks for long, long looks for short. Maybe to add some articulation to that. I think what I'd like you to try tonight is to put your own dynamics into the snare piece. I don't want you to work too much. Don't worry about the yellow after the rain piece. Look at the snare piece and add some dynamics that make sense with the written dynamics that are there. How do your dynamics enhance getting to the dynamics that are explicitly written and make the piece more interesting? And what justification do you give yourself for that? And try to use as many musical truisms as you can think of. And if you think of additional ones to the ones that we just put up here, by all means, add that to your list of here's musical truisms. Okay? Let's take just another second here, if I can get you to stop the video and restart it for me. You have your Casals. Did all of you guys get your books? Did they all come in?
I just got the Casals.
Okay, you didn't get the Bara?
It's not in yet.
Okay. Want to borrow mine? For the meantime, you can just bring it back each class, please.
Okay.